everyone, and welcome back as I take another closer look at an old Predator classic from Neca. And this week it is one of my personal favourites. It is the Elder Predator from Predator 2. Now, unlike some of the other members of the so-called Lost Tribe from Predator 2 who we barely glimpse in the film, the Elder Predator gets some decent screen presence, has a couple of close-ups, and we get a good look at him in the film. He's also quite important because of course he hands Danny Glover the weapon at the end of the film, that signature moment, which is really powerful, and of course really expanded the Predator universe from that point onwards. So a really important character, and I was absolutely mad to get my hands on this figure when it was first released. Now this figure's actually had a number of different releases across the years. They actually did a version 2, which I'll take a quick look at a little bit later, and then of course we've had the Ultimate version in recent years as well. But today we're going to look at this original release, the first release of the Elder Predator. If we start off by taking a look at the packaging, we can see that it's consistent with the other Predator figures that were released in this time. It is single carded, we have that backing card, and we have this sort of bubble packaging, which is pretty cool, and of course we have the branding associated with Predator 2. We have the profile of the City Hunter mask at the top of the packaging. Of course we have the figure in all his glory through that window display there, and behind him we have this sort of mad collage of various Predator hunting motifs, and of course the cityscape in the background. And then at the very bottom of the packaging we have this paper insert which indicates what film it's from, what the character is, and an image of the figure himself. When you open the figure up, the first thing you're going to notice is that this is utilising a previous and older version of the body sculpt, the body mould, and so therefore it has a lot more limited articulation. But on the flip side, it has a lot less joints and grooves, so the body sculpt is more smooth and more defined, more statuesque. So starting off by looking at the head sculpt, I think this is a pretty good sculpt. We've seen many Predators across the years, and we know that Neca do a nice job of these as a rule. Now, we do have some decent photo references from the film, but the lighting isn't great in that scene, or in the sense that it's not very clear to get the best out of those images. But I think, Neca have done a really excellent job of bringing those details to life from what I can see here in terms of the colouring and the markings on the top of the head, the braiding, and the overall detail that we can see there. I think this looks really sharp, and I think they've done a really nice job. I particularly like the paint taps. I think that's very effective. There's a number of different washes running through here, and if you look carefully even at the eyes, which are quite sunken back, you can see that there's some decent paint taps in there as well, which is quite nice to see, as well as the teeth in the inner mouth there. All looks pretty sharp. Now, as you would expect from Neca, there is absolutely tons and tons of detail in these sculpts. Everything is very finely detailed. There's such a lot of attention and care gone into this, which is absolutely fantastic. Each individual braid in the hair, for example, looks really nicely and very personally sculpted, which is brilliant. But of course, as ever with any of this, it's all about the paint taps, and Neca have definitely stepped up to the plate here to make sure that they really capitalise on every bit of detail that they've sculpted in by giving them complementary washes, lots of different colours and textures, and overall the figure just feels much more lifelike, much more authentic, much more screen accurate, and overall just gives it a depth and texture which just takes it to another level, which makes it just feel authentic and real, which is absolutely brilliant. And every piece of this figure looks like it feels the way it should in the film. Doesn't matter whether it's the leather skirt at the bottom there, whether it's the bone necklace, or even the metal gauntlets. It all looks and feels the way it should. And speaking of the gauntlets, he does of course have his hidden razor blades there that can extend all the way out of that gauntlet, which is pretty cool. So they can be fully extended or they can retract back into place. In terms of articulation, there is a ball joint at the top of the neck. Now this headpiece does connect through a simple spike in the top of the neck, but it does allow an incredible amount of movement. So yes, it will move from side to side, but it'll also lean left to right as well, and it will even nod up and down. This is increased articulation to what we were seeing at the time, and this is very much appreciated. Now there are ball joints in the shoulders that will allow the arms to kick out a good distance, but not all the way. There is a pin swivel at the wrist, so sadly no double joint here, but it will allow that lower forearm to spin all the way around and hinge to about 90 degrees. And then there is a pin swivel at the end of the wrist there, allowing that hand to rotate all the way around and of course hinge forwards and backwards slightly as well. Now there is a straight swivel at the waist and also at the top of the thigh, which is a diagonal cut. Now both mine are too stiff to actually move, but trust me, they are meant to. There is also a complementary thigh swivel at the top of the leg there, and then we have a pin swivel at the lower leg. So that again will bend to about 90 degrees and it will turn from side to side. And then finally there's another ball joint at the bottom of the ankle there, allowing the foot to hinge forwards and backwards and slip from side to side. Accessories wise, he's pretty light. He doesn't come with a plasma cannon or the usual backpack that you see with these figures, but he does have some unique, interesting pieces, including that flintlock pistol, that all-important pistol that we see at the end of the film, which looks nicely sculpted and nicely painted. He also comes with this sword though as well, which again is a very interesting shape and size. I think it's a really interesting sculpt in terms of the actual look of the blade, which is quite cool, and again it feels quite textured and it looks worn and authentic, which is great. And this sword has a handy sheath on his belt as well, so you can slide it in or out of there. He has no problems holding this sword either. His grip is nice and tight, so he can strike quite a cool menacing pose with this. And likewise, he has no issues holding the gun either, so you can recreate that iconic scene where he hands the weapon over. Although sadly to date, we've never had a Danny Glover from this line, which is sorely missing. So before I wrap up for today, I did mention at the top of the video that they actually did a version 2 of the Elder Predator. What was different about this particular Predator, aside from the slightly different shading to the packaging? Well, he had some increased articulation, which meant that obviously you can get him into a few more poses, which is great. There also seems to be some slight colouring changes as well to his braids. He seems to have a lot more yellow in there, which is interesting. The expression on the face I think might be a new sculpt, but I think the one major new addition in this case would be the accessory of the plasma cannon. He actually does come with a backpack this time around. And as if that wasn't enough, Neca doubled down and released an ultimate version of this Predator as well. And I think it's fair to say that it's probably inarguable that the packaging is much improved. This box packaging is much better, it's much more robust, and of course it has a lot more fancy artwork on it. I think it just looks a lot more visually impressive, it looks great on display. Of course it opens up as a gatefold cover and you can see the figure inside, and obviously it's really firing on all cylinders. So I think the packaging is a massive improvement, but if we actually look at the Predator itself, we can see of course it has enhanced articulation, most notably in that upper torso. We can see some fresh paint apps as well, seems to be a lot more shading on the legs and in the torso there. Also some tweaks to the gauntlets as well, it has more of a brown texture, leathery texture and a star shape in there, which is interesting. The head sculpt seems to be completely different again, those teeth seem to be a lot more menacing, given a lot more yellow highlights in the top of the head and the braids and on the teeth there. Of course he also comes with an alternate head, which is a masked head, which is very interesting because this doesn't appear in the film, but this looks golden and looks quite cool. And then he has a few fun extra additional accessories as well, including a blast effect for that plasma cannon, the skull, the spine, and an alternate pair of hands. And then even the flintlock and the sword seems to have been updated with a fresh paint wash as well, seems to be more gold than silver this time around. And by comparison with the advent of time and new releases and updates and tweaks, this original Predator is probably looking to be the poor relation. But that being said, I still have great affection for this original release. I actually do like the darker, more grey tones to this Predator. I'm not sure if I'm as keen on the yellow highlights that we see in the later releases. So for me, this still works very, very well. I think this has the advantage with having less articulation in terms of looking more sculpted, looking more statuesque. If you like that approach, then I think this version might actually still hold some appeal for you, but I cannot argue that later editions definitely improved in certain areas, particularly articulation and of course some of those fantastic accessories as well. If you enjoyed this video, please do give it a like and remember to subscribe as there'll be plenty more videos soon.